everyone, and welcome to the STEM Forward with Women podcast. I'm Jennifer Dearman, Chief Customer Officer at Udacity. Udacity's mission is to change lives, businesses, and nations through radical digital talent transformation that creates a job-ready digital workforce on a global scale. I'm your host today, and I'm so excited to be joined by Liesbeth Botha. Liesbeth is an inspirational, outcomes-driven researcher turned executive leader with a track record of digital and organizational transformation, along with a wide range of company, board level, and investment committee experience. Liesbeth has 19 years of experience at the executive level, including 6 years in her current role as Chief Digital Officer at PricewaterhouseCoopers Africa, 6 years as Executive Director of Material Science and Manufacturing at the CSIR, and 5 years as Executive Director of Innovation and Commercialization at Stellenbosch University. Prior to her executive roles, Liesbeth was Professor of Electronic and Computer Engineering at Pretoria University. She's published 38 journal papers and presented and co-authored 120 conference papers. She holds a PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, which also happens to be my alma mater for graduate school. Liesbeth, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jennifer, and very happy to be here.
Excellent. Now we have a very important topic to talk about, especially with the lead up to International Women's Day on March 8th. And that topic is, how can we encourage more women into the STEM related careers? It's a big question. I am super excited to be chatting with you because I know this topic is close to both of our hearts and our respective companies. Last year, Udacity launched a Women in STEM scholarship program designed specifically to advance the STEM careers of women through digital skill attainment. Udacity is invested in this program because we believe increasing the number of women in STEM will have a direct impact on reducing the bias around technology, on how technology is built, affecting how decisions around technology and innovation are made, and creating more opportunities for women to advance in these careers of the future. And we want to be part of the momentum to change the story around women in STEM careers, as I know you do as well. But interestingly, research from the Pew Research Center shows that while women earn more than 50% of the STEM college degrees, they remain underrepresented in the STEM workforce. You and I both know representation in the workforce and creating more opportunities for women in STEM is not just the right thing to do, it's good for business and the economy. So all that said, this brings me to my first question for you. There's a huge potential for GDP growth by closing the STEM gender gap. In monetary terms, closing the STEM gap could lead to an improvement in EU GDP by 610 to 820 billion euros by 2050. What do you see as the most impactful ways government and businesses can contribute to closing the STEM gap and realize this potential?
Jennifer, as you say, yes, topic very close to my heart and something that I dedicate so much energy and time to. Within the parameters of my role at PwC. I think what the most important way to close this gap in the gender equality in STEM is through training, development of skills, and the creation of opportunities, and that is both on that is both for governments and for industry, for corporates and small business equally. Everyone should be focused on that and to empower women to take up these roles. Now, having said that, there's also, of course, what I find equally important is, the power of role models. And I think, creating opportunities blindly almost, and without having role models, role modeling what it could look like, women are still will forever be lost, because and they will not go for these opportunities, and they will not make the most of it. So I'm a very strong believer in this role model, in the power of role models, and also in the power of leadership. from these role models, and how much of a difference that makes. And I've seen this in my own career. Although, I remember in my days of Carnegie Mellon, which, by the way, is about 30 years ago or more. I hesitate to say women should not talk about age, and I am not. I'm just giving you a sort of a time frame here. Even in those days, in those days, the gender inequality, as I was in the engineering faculty there, it was huge, right? There was like, I think you could count the women graduate students in the engineering faculty on one hand almost. Not really, that I'm exaggerating a bit to make the point. And so, although we've made a lot of progress, we've still got a very long way to go. And I think we're only going to reach the tipping point here when we've got enough role models, geographically distributed, and also distributed in all kinds of other dimensions of the corporate world and the academic world and everywhere, for most people, most women and men equally, to look up to these role models and really get an understanding of what this could look like for them, because then they start copying, and then you get that groundswell of women, embracing these opportunities in STEM, and then we'll get this growth that we're looking for.
So much of that resonates with me. I mean, the foundational pieces around training and ensuring that the skills are there, but that role model point that you made is just really touches me deeply. I mean, I can make the same, 30-year references as you. I really don't have a problem talking about age. But my entire career has been in the technology space, and I often get that question of who were your role models, or who are your role models? And as I've looked back on my career, there's never really been a female role model. It just wasn't a thing, from the scarcity to just, I don't know, it just wasn't really available. And so I think that we are obligated as women in STEM careers to be that role model and elevate.
And to be very visible and vocal about it, about whatever it is we want to be visible and vocal about. We of course don't want negative role models, but we certainly want all kinds of role models, so that we can have a diversity of role models for people to identify with. Whether it's and I've been a role model, I know, to many communities, many minorities, because I always think of myself as an icon of intersectionality, where I've been in the minority in my profession. I'm also now, if I may go be brave, I'm also a white South African, if I may bring race into the conversation, and very cautiously. But and I'm also in a population, so that's a minority of about 5 million in a population of over 50 million in this country. Wow. And then I'm also a part of the LGBT community, and very proudly so. So I think that has made me a very effective role model for all kinds of minorities, including women in STEM, of course, but then all kinds of other minorities that we also want to flourish in the STEM environment, then also can identify and be touched by my role model behavior, which I'm very keen about, and I actually make a big effort. But there's another thing. Besides the training and the empowerment through education and skills development, and also besides the role model, I also think there's an elephant in the room, and that is the gender pay gap in STEM. And well, it's the gender pay gap is all over the place, right? But in STEM, I think it is particularly pronounced, and corporates and governments have a responsibility in that regard as well. So we've also got to address that.
Absolutely. Such a salient point that resonates with me as well, and so relevant to this topic. And also, thank you so much for being brave and stepping forward and being the role model that you are to so many to so many organizations and groups. That's so amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about PwC's purpose of building trust in society and solving important problems. I think that is such a big purpose. And I'm wondering if you could share just a bit more about this and how closing the STEM gender gap supports this purpose.
Yeah, well, I've actually thought about that storyline quite a bit, because PwC's building trust in society and solving important problems, is really our purpose. We live that purpose. I think if you sample across the almost 300,000 PwC employees across the globe, I'm going to be brave and say that many of them will know what our purpose are. And they will be able to articulate it, or at least recognize it, when they hear it. So how does that translate into what we're doing, around women in STEM and about STEM itself? And I think it's really well articulated by what is our new strategy that was launched over the past so many months across the world, called the New Equation. And the essence of the New Equation is that we must use human-led and tech-powered solutions really to achieve sustained business outcomes. Okay, that's again a mouthful of what could be heard as corporate jargon. It isn't. It really has meaning. So this human-led, tech-powered, enabled solutions of PwC, how does that actually build trust in society? It's obvious how I think it's obvious how it actually help to solve important problems. But building trust in society, if you really think about it, trust is built on transparency. And what does transparency mean in this day and age, and maybe always? Trust means, and transparency means, that you've got data. You've got data that you can show, visualize, and use to tell your story and build that trust. And using data, and it's easily said, right? Using data and showing the data and using the data to prove something is only done in this day and age if you master the skills of data acquisition, data processing, data visualization, storytelling with data, and you have the platforms to do that in your organization. And that is exactly the essence of what we are doing with our digital and data upskilling programs in PwC. So you can see how this whole narrative weaves together, from the very, I would say, fuzzy level of building trust in society, all the way through down to the technology. What data platforms, what data software, what skills in technology do people need? And you can bring it right down from the fuzzy descriptions right to where you need to have people on digital and data analytics training programs to empower them to do that and to live the purpose of PwC.
Yeah, amazing. I love that description and the connection. So as you think about that, the data, the skills, all of that, and how that feeds into the purpose, what's your perspective on the Udacity PwC relationship and how we're working together, both in support of your purpose, clearly, but also on closing the STEM gender gap?
Well, it is really centered to this very thing, and not only in terms of the skills gap and the women in STEM gap, but it's also there in terms of the role model conversation we had earlier on. So our partnership with Udacity is really where we use the Udacity nano degrees and the excellent bespoke nano degree in business analytics that Udacity has developed with inputs from PwC and in partnership with PwC. That forms the core of our flagship and very high level Digital Accelerator upskilling program. So we've got a massive upskilling program. I know that our global chairman Bob Moritz, announced the amounts that we are investing in digital upskilling and the workforce of the future a year or more than a year ago. It was a staggering amount, and I will not embarrass myself because it's orders of magnitude, beyond my comprehension. But anyway, what we did there is, of course, we've got a whole pyramid of building digital and data skills in our organization. There's the foundational learning that we do with some simple and short online learning. We've got snippets of this and sound bites of that, and then we've got some wonderful apps that's gamified for people to learn, and then we've got academies and etc. But then we've got this flagship Digital Accelerator program, which is really a select few people that we choose in our business to become digital change agents and really play the mini role of what my role is in PwC Africa, and that is to become the agents of change in wherever they might find them in our professional services business, which of course spans from assurance, audit, risk assurance, consulting, forensic deals, you name it. We do all of those, legal and tax and everything. But then, so they stay in their line of service and in the service they provide to clients, but they become the digital change agents there in the business. So we take them through a really broad spectrum curriculum to prepare them for those roles. But at the essence of that, at the core of that, is the Udacity Nano degree, which of course then empowers them on a very technical and digital level, and for data analytics and the rest. And then we package around that all the other softer skills and ancillary skills that they need around change leadership, change management, user-centric thinking, like design thinking, user experience, storytelling, etc. So we build on that core of the Udacity Nano degree to deliver well-rounded digital change agents for our business. And so with that is our biggest partnership with Udacity is for the Digital Accelerator program. And there in that also we try to get the gender balance right, but then on top of that, of course, is this Women in STEM effort and this specific program from Udacity that gave us a nice platform to really just focus on the women and make a significant step in that direction. So that is how Udacity and our partnership fits into this bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it makes such good sense. And I know I speak for everyone at Udacity when I say that it is truly our honor to be a partner with PwC in your Digital Accelerator program, and partnering with you on Women in STEM initiatives is the cherry on top. And so thank you so much for being such a great partner and including us in these big, ambitious, society changing goals that you have.
It is really a pleasure from our side as well, Jennifer. I really have to say that the support that our candidates, I'm not talking generally here, of course that goes without saying, people like you and Marwan in partnering with me, and the conversations we have are great, but really the support that you give your product and your offering gives our candidates on an individual basis, I think differentiates you in the market like none other that I have seen.
Wow. Well, that's amazing feedback. Thank you. I will be sure to share that with everyone inside Udacity. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So one final question for you, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but it'd be great if you could go into it a little bit deeper. You're clearly an accomplished, successful woman in the STEM field. Can you share some of the hurdles that you've personally faced in your career and some of the best advice you might have for women facing headwinds in their own STEM careers?
I really like this question, Jennifer, and you'll see why. I'm going to answer it in a way that I think is not what you expect or what the listeners will expect. I think the biggest hurdles that I've faced in my career as a woman in STEM came from within, There was, I can honestly say, and I've done a lot of introspection and a lot of reflection on this, I can honestly say that I have never felt discriminated against or even felt that there have been hurdles placed by other people in front of me because I'm a woman, or even because of my, because I'm a lesbian, or because I'm a, a whatever I am in that in that intersection of intersectionality. I think the hurdles have always been internal, and that, and that is unconscious bias that I of course suspect in others, and it's against whatever it is I think they are biased against, and it's so what has happened in my career and why I'm such an overachiever is because I've always been, in that top percentage of, probably intelligence and diligence, which is a lethal combination, right? If you work very hard and you're really conscientious and you're smart enough, to do something proper with it. I've always been in that bracket. And by the way, otherwise, as we know, we wouldn't have been allowed in Carnegie Mellon. But
Right.
but what has happened because of my internal, blocks, I've actually worked harder than I think I would have had I been mainstream. And so what's happened is I've achieved a lot of what I have achieved because I think I just worked harder than anybody else that I saw around me to prove a point to myself mostly, And so it has actually served me quite well. It's been a tough life, to be so conscientious and to work so hard. And reflecting back like many other people, there are times when I think, oh, well, I should have done more of that, or maybe I should have explored more of the other thing. But thinking back on my very, very rich and diverse career, as you gave a glimpse of that in the introduction, I wouldn't have wanted to miss out on any of that either, right? And it's not as if I only worked. I'm not a workaholic by any means. I work very, very hard, and I dedicate a lot of my thought and my time to my career. But I'm not short on adventures and experiences totally outside of my work. I have an equally illustrious background in the adventures that I have, that I've lived through, and I can tell you stories forever around campfires should we ever have that opportunity. But so if you ask me the question about women in, what have I experienced as a woman, a successful woman in STEM, it is that I suspect unconscious bias against me, and I work harder than anybody else, twice, 3 times as hard, to show them a point that women are equal, if not better than men. And so it served me well. As we develop more role models in this field, I hope that those women and other minorities that I'm a role model for will learn and will understand eventually that they are good enough, right? They don't have to work twice as hard. So I don't wish that for the rest of the generations to come, and so on. They must, of course. I am old school in the sense that I think you really have to put in the effort, put in the hours, put in the commitment to achieve your goals and realize your dreams. I am old-fashioned in that way, but I don't think you've got to you have to go to such lengths as I did, and that's why our role models are. That's also what we're there for, is to make life easier for those that come after us. Not easy in the sense that it's easy, but easier than what we had to, endure to be successful as we are.
Oh, you're right. Such a thoughtful answer. And I wasn't expecting that angle either. And what I find so interesting about your answer is how closely that aligns with my experience. I also, sort of growing up in this space, didn't really recognize any hurdles, right? But I just worked hard. I knew I had to work hard, and I knew I had to study hard and all of those things, and I had to put in the time. And so I completely align with you on that. I'm thinking that part of the issue that we have today is just a general level of lack of confidence. And you touched on that a little bit, right? Like just the idea that there are these hurdles, and we don't have the confidence that perhaps as women we should have. But I fully agree with you. You've still got to put in the hard work. You've still got to study hard. You've still got to, make things happen. And maybe that's a little old school, but I totally agree with that. I think you're right.
Yeah. And there's another smaller point that I want to make, and you touch on that. We've got to somehow inspire confidence and courage into the women, to just try it, just do it and just try it, to borrow from a tagline. Just experiment, just go for it and see what happens. I hope we have time that I can tell a small, share a small anecdote with you.
Yes.
When the first time I had the opportunity to travel to the US it was very long ago. It was in 1985. I got an award for the best engineering student in the faculty at Pretoria University, and the prize, the award, was a month in America.
Oh, wow.
And it was incredible, right? It was before internet. So to organize a trip like this was absolutely groundbreakingly difficult from South Africa, when the world was not connected at all. And but anyway, that's one of my achievements. But I ended up at a DARPA conference. I think it was in Washington, D.C., because I had heard of artificial intelligence, and I was looking for a conference, an academic conference to go to. I was a master's student then at the time, and I ended up at this conference, and there was this professor teaching the short course on artificial intelligence, and he was Professor David Cassisant from Carnegie Mellon University. I had, of course, never heard of Carnegie Mellon in my life. I mean, how would I in Pretoria, in the paper-based library of Pretoria University in 1985? So, but the best I had was a master's thesis from MIT on artificial intelligence and line extraction in digital images. Anyway, so I ended up there, and I realized I was out of place. I had a pink t-shirt on with a Cadillac and California all over it, and a pair of jeans, because that's what I thought you wore in America. But I was surrounded by men in dark suits and white shirts from DARPA, from the Defense Research Agency, right? So I was so out of place, and Lincoln Labs everywhere. And I mean, I stood out like a sore thumb. And those were the days when we were still smoking, and we're smoking out inside. So during the coffee break, so here I am, in a place where I shouldn't have been, and I wouldn't have been if I had known. But there, I didn't know what I didn't know, and there I ended up, and I was smoking my Marlboros, because there was a boycott in South Africa. You couldn't get Marlboro, so I was smoking Marlboros like crazy when I was in the US, and I was standing at the ashtray, and Professor Cassisant walked up to me. He was teaching the course, and it was coffee break. He said to me, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" I said, I still used my full name then. I said, "I'm Liesbeth Botha, and I'm from South Africa, and I am looking for a graduate school to do my PhD." The man's eyes went like this. I mean, he wasn't expecting that answer either. He said, "Have you considered Carnegie Mellon?" I said, "I must admit, I've never heard of Carnegie Mellon." He said, "Well, change your flights, change your plans. My wife and I will pick you up at the airport. Whenever you get there, let me know." And the rest is history. So, we don't know what we don't know, that sometimes we're brave and stupid, and fools rush in where DARPA men fear to tread. And here I am, 30 years later with my PhD and doing fabulous things, I think, in the world.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing story.
But it's the same experimenting with, I almost want to bring it back to technology, and being brave to use and try technology to solve a problem. Just try it, just get your hands dirty. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to burn anything with like we did in the old days with soldering irons and things like that. It's just, you know, you're just gonna build some pieces of software and experiment and discover things. And I think we must encourage women to be experimental and brave and courageous to try these things.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Liesbeth, so much for sharing your great stories, sharing your perspective and insights with me today on closing the gender gap in STEM fields. I've so enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you.
Now this-
Me too. And
yeah,
thank you, really thank you for the opportunity.
absolutely. Thanks so much. So this brings us to the end of this episode of the STEM Forward with Women podcast. Thank you to all our listeners, and I hope everyone has a great day.